Hi guys, this is Chelsea and this is my Module 1 practice. So I will start with my simple thermometers. There's a picture of me spray painting the white one. I chose spray paint and I'm glad that I did. I actually had fun spray painting them, so I can understand why Dr. Dietrich said that students she thought would be more engaged. Here's a video of me spray painting the black one. I had to be a little crafty because I had no one to take the video for me, so my phone's actually stuck in a tree. Oh, and I almost tripped over a stick. Alright, let's get back to the PowerPoint. And I will come back to the thermometers and how I use them a little bit later. But right now I want to jump into my question, which was, how can the people of Bangladesh grow crops on their flooded lands? The Module 1 theory reading and videos had me looking into the grand challenges of engineering, one of them being food and agriculture. And I stumbled across a really great organization that is helping the people of Bangladesh who have yearly a big food crisis because they have a monsoon season where their land gets completely flooded and they're unable to grow crops. So I wanted to have my students explore how they could help the people of Bangladesh fix this problem. And so just a quick reminder, there's the engineering design process we're going to walk through. Alright, so step 1 is to identify the problem. So my problem is that the people of Bangladesh need a way to grow crops on their flooded land. And there you can see an actual picture of a family in Bangladesh after the monsoon season or during it, and their land is completely flooded and they obviously are unable to grow crops. And just in case you would like to use this in your own classroom, the way that I would present this to students with a design challenge would be, I have it here, You Work for Practical Action, which is the name of a real organization we'll look at later. And you have been asked to design and create a floating garden so that families in Bangladesh are able to grow crops on their flooded land. I would have students create their garden completely out of recyclable materials. Alright, my exploration is going to look a little bit different than what my students' exploration will look like when they do this activity in my classroom. But I spent some time looking at Practical Action's website and how they actually have solved this problem. So here's the Practical Action logo, and here is a picture that I took straight from their website, and it is an actual layout of how they design and build their floating gardens. So you can see you have the flood water. They actually use water hyacinths as a main component of their floating garden because they're in abundance in Bangladesh and they're free. They also have a lot of bamboos. They use that as part of to build the structure. And another layer of water hyacinths. And for the nutrients in the soil, it's made out of cow dung, dirt, and compost. And then they have their crops on the top. So I thought that was a really great picture. Some more interesting facts that I found here from the website. In addition to their annual monsoon season, that leads to what they call the annual manga, which is their period of food shortages. The vegetables that they grow on their floating gardens are typically gourd, okra, and other leafy vegetables. I also thought it was interesting that they have to build a new raft every single year, but luckily they can use the old one as fertilizer during the dry season. And Practical Action not only helps them build these floating gardens, but also trains them in how to cultivate the pits and shows them how to protect against plant diseases and insect attacks and how to prepare compost, which I thought was great. Alright, so as I said, that was my exploration phase, but when I have my students complete this activity, their exploration is going to be looking more into the recyclable materials that I have available for them, and they're going to have to determine which ones are buoyant and would actually float on water so that their garden can be successful. And so I would give them a large tub of water and all of the materials I have available, and I'd let them just place the materials in the water and determine what's going to work and what isn't going to work. So that would be more of their exploration phase when they would complete this. All right, moving into my design phase, I just went on Sketchpad and drew a sort of a blueprint of what I was thinking. I laid out my materials. I didn't have a whole lot to work with, but we made it work here. So here you can see this main box here is a shoe box that I had, and around it to make the floating garden buoyant, I have one large water bottle, and I had a whole bunch of empty cans that I thought I could just tape around the shoebox. I also wanted to have a little extra room to grow more crops, so that's where the plastic yogurt container and the plastic cherry tomato container came into the mix. And because the shoebox is made of cardboard, I didn't want it to be able to get wet, so I figured I would line the entire floating garden with a couple layers of aluminum foil, because I know that that would be buoyant and it would protect the shoebox from getting wet. So there's my blueprint, and then I decided to get to work. So here you can see I have all my materials laid out and ready to go. I have my blueprint in the background to work with, and here would be phase 1 of me working, where I just taped on my extra containers to the shoebox and my water bottle. Here I have taped on a bunch of cans to help the floating garden be extra buoyant. And then here you can see that I'm starting to put on the aluminum foil under the bottom to protect the cardboard box and to help ensure that it's buoyant. And then it came time to try it out. So I went to a local stream and I plopped it in, and it floated beautifully. I didn't have any extra dirt, but if I had my students do this, I thought it would be a great idea to actually have them put soil inside of their container and maybe even get some seeds, put it in a tub of water, and leave it outside. I have a giant window that goes the whole way down to the ground that we could put our tubs in front of, so that every day they could see if their crops were actually growing. I thought that would be kind of fun. So this is where my simple thermometers came into play. I tried to think through a student perspective and come up with a question that they might have with the thermometers, and I came up with, would the temperature be hotter or cooler over top of water or over top of land? So I used my floating garden to put I really only paid attention to the black thermometer, put the black thermometer on there. I had a stopwatch on my phone that I timed, and so it took about 2.5 minutes for the balloon to inflate, and after that I let the thermometer cool down to room temperature, and I moved it to land far away from the stream and set my stopwatch again, and it only took about 56 seconds for the thermometer over top of the grass to inflate. So I could tell that, even though it's not 100% accurate, I could tell that the temperature was much cooler over the water. All right, so the very final, well, not final because it never technically ends, but to kind of close up my engineering design process for today at least, if I were going to improve my design, some things that I would do. After I put my floating garden in the water, I realized that the cardboard box, if I was going to put soil and actually try to grow crops in it, the cardboard box would not hold up, because if I was going to water the crops, then the cardboard box would get wet and soggy. So I thought it would be good to wrap the shoebox in saran wrap several times so that I could water the crops and the dirt, and the cardboard box would be safe. I also would like to make it a little bit bigger. Obviously, it was a pretty small garden. I wouldn't be able to get a whole lot of crops out of that. So if I could expand it, add more containers to have more space for growing crops. And I also thought it would be a good idea to tie a string to the garden. Thinking about the people of Bangladesh, if they were going to keep this garden in their yard, I wouldn't want it to accidentally float away, so we would need maybe a string to anchor it somewhere and be able to pull it in when they were ready to harvest their crops. All right, now taking a look at the practices from our textbook, I thought that there were a lot that connected to this activity. Obviously, for the science, ask questions was a big one, because we started with a question that we wanted to solve. For both science and engineering, we developed and we used models. We developed the thermometer, which was more of the science aspect, I would say, and the floating garden was more of the engineering aspect. And in both areas, we plan and carried out investigations. For science, we really looked at the temperature with the thermometers, and for engineering, we had this problem that we wanted up here. We defined the problem of the people of Bangladesh not being able to grow crops in their flooded land, and so we planned out a floating garden, and we built that. Taking a look at technology, kind of both of these, I sort of have the same thing to say here, but become aware of the web of technological systems on which society depends. I think that this activity really helps students to see how technology is absolutely necessary to keep up with real-world and current issues. So that also helps them to recognize the role that technology plays in the advancement of science and engineering. And then finally, in mathematics, use appropriate tools strategically. There wasn't a whole lot of math that took place in this activity, but absolutely that thermometer, and I used a stopwatch. So we used those two tools to measure temperature. So that's how mathematics came into play. And that about summarizes my activity. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a blast, and I'm really looking forward to implementing this in my classroom. And here is just the resource that I used for my exploration phase if you want to learn a little bit more about practical action and their floating gardens. Alrighty, thanks for listening.